Hi. So, I've been reflecting this week on some passages of scripture, and one of those passages was a story in Mark about Jesus and give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. And these religious leaders come to him and they're trying to trap him, and so they butter him up with some soft words, tell him how wise he is, how he's not shaken or swayed by power or influence, but he just tells the truth and he just reveals what is. And they're buttering him up, and then he goes, so our taxes, should we be paying our taxes to Caesar or shouldn't we? And they're trying to trip him up, they're trying to catch him out, because if he says yes you should, then all these Jewish people are following him, all these people who are getting really excited about him, who see him as the revolutionary, who see him as the Messiah. Well, the Messiah is supposed to come and confront the Roman Empire, overthrow the Roman Empire, and so if he says yeah he should, then he's going to be in trouble. And actually they think a lot of the power of his message, his claim to be the Messiah, will be shaken. But if he says no you shouldn't, then he's going to be in trouble with the Roman authorities, and then they can get him charged and they can get him arrested, and they can for inciting a revolution. So they're trying to trip him and corner him and catch him out. But Jesus doesn't give a straight answer, because Jesus doesn't give straight answers. He always seems to know what to say. I spent a lot of my childhood being that kid who, you'd be in a situation, then you'd go home and you'd kind of go, oh, I should have said this, and I should have said that. And you kind of replay it in your mind, and you come up with these really smart ways of how you could have answered and what you could have said. And if only you'd been quick enough. But Jesus is always there with a really smart answer and a really clever answer and a really insightful answer, but not just an obvious answer that shoots the other people down, but a way that really reflects back to them who they are, that really illuminates their heart and what they're about. And so Jesus comes back and he says a couple of really interesting things, and he says, well, bring me a coin. And they present him with a coin. And the fact that they're able to present him with a coin is really interesting, because why are they carrying around this Roman money? Because there's Jewish money and there's Roman money, and these religious leaders are carrying around Roman money. They bring him the coin, which illustrates that they're in bed with the Roman Empire. The religious powers and the political powers are working together, they're collaborating together. And so they're embarrassed straight off just by having to present a coin. And then he says, well, whose image is on this, and whose inscription is on this? And it just struck me that there were two questions. Why didn't you just go, well, whose image is on? And actually I always thought he was like, whose image is on this? That's the story, that's how I thought the story went. But actually in the text it says whose image is on this and whose inscription is on this. And so it got me kind of thinking, so why are there two questions here? And I think the first question relates, actually, in these religious leaders' minds, will take them straight back to, well, you shall have no graven images, you shall have no carved images, you shall have no, because that's idolatry. The second commandment takes them right back to the 10 Commandments, takes them right back and shows them actually that even having this coin is somehow in contravention to the second commandment. But then whose inscription takes them right back to the shaman. Now, the shaman is in Deuteronomy, but it's kind of like the Lord's Prayer for the Jewish community. It still is today. They will recite it twice a day. The Lord, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And after this it says that we should inscribe this on our hearts, that we should write it on our doorposts, and we should have it on our foreheads and on our wrist, and it talks about inscribing the law on our hearts. And I just wonder whether there's a link here that actually for these leaders they would go straight back to that and go, so the law, the image thing is about the 10 Commandments, and the inscription thing it's referencing to as being inscribed in our hearts, that our faith, the law of God should be inscribed in our hearts, and this inscription is in contravention to that. And right away he's drawing people right back to the core of the Jewish faith and saying this is at odds with the Jewish faith. And I just think it's brilliant. But then he goes on and he says, and there was a word that really surprised me. He said, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's. And again, that's not how I think when I remember the story, this is a story that feels very familiar, but I was like, well, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But he doesn't. He says, and this word back just leapt out to me. Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And it raised this question in my spirit. What are the things that we need to give back? You see, he doesn't say give to Caesar. Yeah, pay your taxes. Like, yeah, the money's yours, but you need to give this percentage to Caesar. He's going, look, it's all Caesar's. If you're buying into this system, if you're buying into this capitalist system, if you're buying into this power system, if you're buying into this system of war and oppression and power, well, look, it's all Caesar's. Like, give it back to him. You shouldn't have it in the first place. And give back to God what is God's. Which kingdom are we part of? The kingdom that is come, that Jesus declares, that says that God is and all things are his. All creation is his. That everything we have is his. That we are part of this kingdom that says that this is not the end. This kingdom that talks about a trajectory of hope, a trajectory of justice, a trajectory of truth. This kingdom that says that all things, that God is restoring and realigning and renewing all things to himself. Or we're buying into the system of our culture. And yeah, it's not the Roman Empire today, but we live in a culture that's just as powerful, that's in many ways just as violent, just as greedy. And in this time of lockdown, it just had me asking the question, what are the things that I've adopted from my society, that we've adopted from our society, that we need to give back? That we shouldn't have them in the first place? What are the attitudes? And it might be money. It might be money for some of us, but actually, I wonder whether, we live in a very individualistic society that says that you can do whatever you want to do, and you can be whatever you want to be, and you can, don't rock the boat, but you can do whatever you want to do and be whatever you be. Individualism, it's all about you. What makes you happy? What satisfies you? What makes you feel important? What makes you feel, what are you prepared to do? What are you not prepared to do? What works for you and what doesn't work for you? And I wonder whether we've bought into a very individualistic empire that says it's all about you, when actually we're supposed to be part of a kingdom that has community right at its core. We're supposed to be part of a community that's about the other rather than ourselves, that puts God at the centre and says that everybody is loved by this God. That says the way of Jesus cannot be lived in isolation. We do this together. And where have we brought into this system of individualism and individuality? Where have we brought into this system of greed and just satisfying ourselves and pleasure and entertaining ourselves and doing what we want to do and not doing what we don't have to do? Of liberation, I'll give what I want to give and not what I don't want to give. I'll engage where I want to engage and not where I don't want to engage. Where everything's on our terms. And where have we brought into that kingdom which we were never supposed to be part of? So maybe this week, let me encourage you to do some reflecting and give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give back to God what is God's. Amen.